So up first, we'd like to welcome Jennifer Deal of Aurora West Allis Medical Center. Welcome, Jennifer. Let's give her a hand.
All right, so, oh boy, I'm already like, I guess it's probably the big button. Nope, that's the laser. The green button? There we go. So, hi, I'm Jennifer Deal, and I'm here from Advocate Health Midwest. So I work at Aurora West Allis Medical Center, but that's part of Advocate Health Midwest region, and I'm here to share how we've maximized our tools and increased user engagement, workflow efficiency, and repository awareness with Springshare products. So a little background, we're a large healthcare system spanning 2 states with over 76,000 employees. Share, which is our institutional repository's name, which I saw, we promised we didn't steal it, but I came across it after we changed our name to that. I was like, oh, we're not the first ones in medical repositories. But started in 2014, and we have limited staff, so that just includes myself, and then I have one additional librarian that offers part-time support. And content includes both scholarly activity and historical content from our legacy institutions. Our primary stakeholder groups include graduate medical education, faculty, residents, and fellows, nursing research, the Research Institute, and individual practicing clinicians. So while stakeholder group leadership have prioritized the inclusion of scholarly activity within Share, individuals have struggled to submit the activity. I feel like that's definitely a pattern that we've been hearing about today. Due to time and technology constraints. So at the same time, as a large institution, staying on top of the ever-increasing amount of scholarly activity and also disseminating information about this activity across our organization can be challenging. And our library began using the Springshare suite of products in 2021. And over the last few years, we've implemented several low-effort, high-reward strategies to increase user submission, workflow efficiency, and the visibility of Share. So using LibWizard, so I'm going to talk about a lot of different products, but one of the products in the Springshare suite that a lot of you are probably familiar with, LibWizard, we've implemented submission forms that don't require any sort of login and allow the flexibility and clean look of cascading logic. So on the left on this screen is a screenshot of a single submission form that displays only the fields the user needs to fill out for their particular item, depending on the type, if it's a journal article, book chapter, poster presentation. And then on the right is an Excel spreadsheet template I embedded in the form that they can choose to fill out if they're submitting multiple like items. For example, a GME coordinator is posting several posters from the same conference. We've also developed a similar submission form for historical content where they can attach the images and documents related to organizational history. And again, it's like the 3-field form. We also developed a custom LibWizard submission form for an annual event we have called Scientific Day. And that form allowed that same cascading logic and rich text formatting. And then the IR manager, me, used Digital Commons batch upload feature to export data from LibWizard into Excel. So you can export into Excel from LibWizard, kind of clean up that metadata, and then import it into Digital Commons. So then the review process could still happen there. And since implementing LibWizard forms in June 2023, user submissions have increased by more than 250%. I did want to put that in context. We still are not getting the majority of our content that we're putting in through user submissions. So from 2021 to 2022, it was 121 submissions were coming from outside, the library, finding content, versus 468 happening in 2023 and so far in 2024. So we're pleased with this increase, but the library continues to collect, as I said, the majority of that content, and we're hoping that marketing around the submission forms and how quick and easy it is will increase user submissions. And then another thing that we've done is at that same Scientific Day event in 2023, which was held virtually, we implemented a new fan favorite award by embedding pre-filled forms into Share records. So we were able to come up with something that approximated the experience of clicking a like button with just one more step. So on this slide, on the left, you can see what it ended up looking like for conference attendees. And this was just embedded in another HTML-enabled field. And when they clicked it, it would take them into what you see on the right, which is a pre-populated form that had been created in LibWizard. And then all they had to do was click the vote button, and that would generate a response and cast their vote. And there was over 400 votes were submitted, which really was exceeded the expectations of the conference organizers. So that was a win for us. And repository staff have optimized our workflows with the ability to distribute the IR workload more easily, as well as have greater control over the metadata, since we can clean it up before it goes into share. We implemented an IR-specific libanswers queue that allows work to be shared among staff. So, they'll generate in LibWizard, they'll fill out a form, and then it'll go to that libanswers queue. And usually it's me, but if I'm out, like this week, then someone will get it and work on it, or I can assign it to the other person that helps me. And since bulk exports are possible directly from LibWizard, like I said, we can export that data from multiple submissions into Excel, clean up the metadata, and combine it with our regular weekly harvest workflow that we do to help us stay on top of those submissions. And one of the last things I want to talk about is LibGuides integration. So as a large organization, it's hard to make sure everyone knows about Share. And one way we've met our users where they're at is by embedding relevant readership maps and RSS feeds into our subject specialty LibGuides. So this slide shows one we created for geriatric medicine. So library patrons use these guides to find library databases, journals, and ebooks that we subscribe to that are specific to their specialties. So we chose to add an Advocate Health Midwest authored research page in each appropriate guide where they could see what their colleagues have been working on in that specialty. And we were able to embed the RSS feed from the relevant Share series and embed the readership map from that same series. That demonstrated how those works are then being accessed. So my final thoughts are just many libraries do use the Springshare suite of products, and with budgets tightening, fully maximizing all the tools at our disposal, in this case, LibWizard, libanswers, and LibGuides, helped us to increase user engagement, optimize workflow efficiency, protect limited staff time, and market the library's efforts with products we already had. And I'd say don't be afraid to try something new, but at the same time, think about the sustainability of your innovation so you can continue using it well into the future. Thank you for your attention, and I have my contact information, so you can contact me after, or I know there will be a question and answer at the end.
Well, as this says, my name is Lisa Price, and I'm the Research Support Librarian. Actually, the name is much longer than that. I'm at the Hope Brings Strength Health Sciences Library of Rowan Virtua School of Osteopathic Medicine of the et cetera. Yeah. Anyway, what I'm going to talk about today is how we adapted the Digital Commons submission software to work as a registration software for us. And I would be remiss if I claimed to have done this all by myself, so I need to mention my collaborators. Diana Adisa is the administrative analyst in the Department of Research, and Stephen Torhouse is our digital commons consultant, and he spent quite a bit of time on the phone with us, helping us work out what we could do and how we could best do it. Okay, so again, a little bit of background. The Stratford campus, which is the School of Osteopathic Medicine campus, has an annual research day, and they've been doing it for many years. Last year was the 28th, or this year in May was the 28th annual. We've been adding the posters from Research Day to Rowan Digital Works since 2018. And when we first started doing it, the Department of Research was hosting their the event was previously hosted on a different site with different software. And the posters were added to Rowan Digital Works after the fact. So it required manual transfer of posters and data, but I could do it in my own time. So it wasn't, I mean, it was tedious, but doable. Well, starting in 2023, they decided they would no longer use that other software. They would use Rowan Digital Works as the live site for the day of, which is great, but it created urgency to get everything up by the evening before. I and Diana both worked the weekend before. We were both working nights because we had to manually transfer everything. So, and I also had to enlist others, other librarians to help me do it and provide training to them so that they would know how. We wondered if we could just have submission directly into RDW, but there was no registration software in the Digital Commons package. So our solution is that I collaborated again with Diana, and we discussed what information would satisfy both registration needs, because she needed some information that I didn't, and RDW needs. And we worked with Stephen on how to modify that submit event form so that we could best capture all of that necessary information. We had to discuss what would be required and what would be optional. They have to give permission in order for us to put anything, and some fields were hidden to submitters to minimize the confusion, but still allow me and us to do what we needed to do. Things like I am the one who assigns the categories, the disciplines, that is, and I verified author affiliation. I reviewed the keywords. I made sure that it was a PDF. They were supposed to submit as PDFs, but they didn't all do that. And I also checked them for potential HIPAA or copyright issues. And there were some that I had to send back, and they either had to edit, or there was one that I just was not able to post. It was a case report, and they didn't have the patient's permission readily available. All of this was going on behind the scenes. Everything was hidden from public view until the night before the event. That way, both Diana and I could look at the submissions and access reports, and I could process what I needed to process and do the preliminary steps for uploading. And then with Stephen, we actually had to use the closed track procedure, which he specifically told me, it says don't do this, but it's okay, you can do it. I will help you get it back up. That way I was able to select which ones to publish, because some of the submissions were only for print. Some said no, they don't want to have it on Rowan Digital Works, but because we were collecting all of the information on RDW, I had to be able to pick and choose which ones I wanted. So the results are that I dramatically improved the workflow, because it saved me a lot of both time and effort to make sure that everything was online for the event. There were 242 registered posters. 27 of them were either print only or didn't give permission to post. And there were a few that had an embargo. We give them a 6-month or 1-year embargo option. So that meant 209 of them went up without any question or problem. But there are a few things we need to tweak for this next one coming up in May of 2025. We had a couple situations where students granted permission without obtaining faculty approval, and so that meant we had 2 faculty members coming to us and saying, get that down, that's proprietary information. So we have to account for that. Considering we're discussing how we might be able to use the presenter approval required and make sure that it goes only to the faculty members, if there are faculty members involved. I mean, some of them are just student posters, and faculty's not really a problem. We need to better define some of our fields, and some of our instructions we've discovered need a little bit of clarification. But on the whole, we felt like it worked pretty well. I'm also in the process of creating DOIs for all of the year's posters. We just added that field in 2024, so I'm going back retrospectively. I have to document the process for the future, and or if somebody else would take over this project. What we've created should be replicable with some revisions for other Rowan conferences. And one of the reasons I'm presenting it here is that I believe it has a potential to share with other institutions as a model for what to do.
Hello. Change it from my face. Okay. There we go. So my name is Michael Burke, and I am the Digital Repositories Librarian at Berklee College of Music in Boston. And it's nice to be at the other Berklee, as I consider it. I'll be talking to you about how we've chosen to showcase our graduate student theses in Digital Commons. We are a performing arts institution, so a lot of our work falls under what might be called non-traditional materials. Hopefully you can learn a little bit about design considerations we had, problems we ran into for your own non-traditional works. A little bit about the works that we were working here with. Our culminating experience projects are degree requirements. They are often multi-component, so a single project will have as much as a paper, a video, a recording, a score, etc. They range from student to student, so they're highly individual as well, and they often contain large multimedia files. This project was about 1,200 projects that we uploaded, and is around 1.5 terabytes of data. We, the Berklee Archives, have been making this material available in our Aurora instance. We weren't very happy with the difficult browsing nature of the highly nested structures, so when processing of these projects stopped with COVID, and we had recently adopted Digital Commons, it was sort of the perfect opportunity to reimagine how we showcased these. So we worked with our Graduate Studies division to come up with some of their design wishes, their wish list, and they really wanted to have abstracts browsable from a collection page. They wanted to be able to group files together in different ways, and they wanted an opportunity to increase the standardization of what I mentioned were oftentimes very different projects. And we went with the Digital Commons Book Gallery to do so. It offered that abstracts right there on the collection page. We could customize cover images to increase the standardization of projects. And as you'll see later, we also really liked the way these handled additional files for what were many different components to an individual project. At the item level, we had a lot of challenges. So as you may know, you're only allowed one streaming player per item currently. And for projects that had many different streaming possibilities, we had to decide what that would be. So for each program, we chose what was usually the most common and original work within the streaming files that we had to highlight as that one streaming player. And it varied from program to program. In our scoring program, it was the recording of original compositions students made. And in our music production program, it was the sort of documentary video each student had about their project. Additional challenges. So as you also may know, for the streaming player to encode in an object, the object has to have the primary file as the site where the multimedia file is uploaded. So our program directors were a little concerned about elevating one part of a project over another, so we chose to disable the download of primary files and instead re-upload those files as additional files. So this is the example of what that ends up looking like at the item level. We have the streaming player available to play. This is the project video I mentioned. And the additional files appear above the metadata, which is really helpful for our multi-component projects. General best practices is to follow Library of Congress recommended formats when possible. they are a great resource if you're dealing with project files. You might not be familiar with their types. The DigiPres community also has some great resources on that topic. And I should also mention we were treating these collections as our sort of access copies of things. We have a separate preservation workflow. So we weren't afraid to compress large files when that posed an issue for our uploading, and we sort of set an automatic rule to do so with a certain kind of threshold. And we chose to zip together project files according to type for those information packages to be standardized across projects. So our audio formats stayed together in a zip file, as did video files and images. This is especially important if you're working with audiovisual material. Make sure you're incorporating playback checks into your workflows. We found a number of files that were corrupted and couldn't play back, and we also found a lot of material that we couldn't share due to copyright. We had one student who rescored some Disney scenes, and that was not going to fly. We worked in small batches of 20 projects at a time, and we used a number of different tools from the batch upload tool. This was also before batch upload for additional files was available, so we're excited to use that in the future as well. A final piece, if you're working, again, especially with audiovisual material, make sure you're keeping track of embargo information separately. Currently, the feature that enables embargoes doesn't apply to the embedded streaming player or additional files. So we found that we had to take down some projects temporarily. We have uploaded like a placeholder file in those cases so that the embargo statement now functions and users can know when to check back for project files that will be available at a later date, at which time we will be going and doing the uploading then. And yeah, we have a lot of future plans. We now have a lot of video material that needs transcripts in our repository, so that's a big area. And again, using some of the new DC features that have been rolled out since we started the project. So happy to answer questions later.
Hey everyone, my name is Kenneth Haggerty. I am the Associate Dean for Innovation and Scholarly Engagement at the University of Memphis. I'm going to spend the next few minutes talking about how we have utilized Digital Commons exhibits to showcase emeritus faculty scholarship and legacies. So this project began in the spring of 2023. The engineering department, along with the provost, contacted the library to ask for some action on the part of university leadership to bring the memory of Dr. Stan Franklin's accomplishments into view within the public spaces of the university. We had recently acquired the Digital Commons in 2021, and so this immediately came to mind as a platform that we could utilize along with the Digital Commons exhibits. We shared some options with the engineering and computer science faculty in the summer of 2023 and built the Academic World of Stan Franklin in DCX in the fall of 2023, as well as a collection dedicated to his works through the Cognitive Computing Research Group. Both the collection and the exhibit were shared with the family of Stan Franklin, and Stan Franklin had recently passed away, and since then we built 2 other exhibits to honor the life and scholarship of other University of Memphis faculty members. And so here is Stan Franklin. And so this was the first exhibit that we built. He was an emeritus professor and the founder of the Institute of Intelligent Systems, and is considered a pioneer in artificial intelligence, and he passed away in January 2023. And so here's just a quick little image here of the exhibit. After his death, professors in multiple departments across campus created a tribute shared folder that contained dozens of images, including childhood pictures dating back to the 1930s when he was born. Also in the shared folder were newspaper clippings and a 40-page essay that included a bio, personal stories from colleagues, and biographical notes. Due to the extent of the content that was provided to me, I built a traditional multi-page exhibit. The homepage is shown here, along with 2 pages, one for his CV, and the other is just a 40-page essay that everyone wrote. After I completed that, and that was very well accepted, I wanted to try out the scrolling exhibits. And so John Evans, who was the reason the University of Memphis actually acquired the Digital Commons, recently retired. And so I built a scrolling exhibit dedicated to John, who had spent over 40 years working at the university libraries and was the first library faculty member to obtain emeritus faculty rank. And so I found the scrolling exhibit to be very user-friendly, and luckily, since he had retired, I had all these collected images and testimonials in a timeline. And so this was really actually pretty easy to put together, since I just had it readily available, and I thought this worked very, very well. And then finally, David Evans is a professor emeritus of music at the University of Memphis. He was very interested in building a legacy preservation exhibit. He is a very well-known music professor, as well as a two-time Grammy winner for Best Album Notes, and was recently introduced into the Blues Hall of Fame in 2023. Dr. Evans, personally, he provided some of the images, as well as an abbreviated and full-length CV that he wanted to include in the exhibit. And for this, we did the traditional exhibit, which is 2 pages, and Dr. Evans recently approved it and liked the look of the exhibit and felt it was very important for institutional continuity. Okay, so moving forward, overall, I'm really excited to move forward with building more exhibits and presenting the potential to create other legacy exhibits across campus to other departments, and to create more consistency on how the exhibits are displayed and how the information is presented. Finally, I look forward to working with the BPress team to identify maybe potential areas of improvement. But for the most part, DCX is pretty easy to use. It looks really good on the front end, especially I like the scrolling exhibits. On the back end, I've run into a few navigational challenges. There are times I clicked on certain things and got error messages, like adding a child page and a few language inconsistencies. But overall, I think it's a very useful product. What I want to end on is the one thing that has become very clear to me through the process of building faculty exhibits is, although so much of the focus is rightfully on faculty scholarship, there is so much more to an emeritus faculty's legacy than their research. It's the relationships. So I'm really thankful, and everyone at the university is thankful for DCX, that they've given the University of Memphis a platform to display the positive influence on some of our most distinguished faculty members on not just a research level, but on a personal level. Thank you very much.
Okay, good afternoon, and I really wanted to do this in the morning when I was still fresh, but here we go. My talk is ETD Roundup. It's creating a complete ETD collection without having one to start from. A little bit of background. Why ETDs? That's content that's in demand. It's generally easy to capture, demonstrates our campus's research focus, is part of the institutional record, and is actually quite heavily used. Our particular challenges at UAB, University of Alabama, Birmingham, we are actually a merged institution. The Birmingham area had a number of smaller institutions that merged into one, and each of these institutions had different policies, and the dissertations and theses were not consistently retained. There was no unified collection policy between the different institutions or libraries. The dissertations and theses were aggressively weeded. There was continued division at our campus between the medical and non-medical, and once we got unified, our grad school did not go back and look at things retrospectively. Therefore, they had some incomplete records and quite a number of typos, especially in the degree field. So our collections were a little bit incomplete, and what we did have was often focused on the PhD with nothing from the master's programs. We did have small pockets of dissertations and theses mixed into our physical collection. We had no consistency in locating dissertations and theses in our catalog records, because when these were originally cataloged, there was not any kind of consistency in the way they were coded. We had a tiny existing electronic theses and dissertations collection. So that was part of our content DM collection. Unfortunately, these PDFs were generated from TIFFs, and there was not any OCR on these documents. And for the most part, these were scanned only to fulfill user requests to make these items available. Our campus was particularly late in implementing the ETD administrator from ProQuest for content upload. It was 2008 before we started using it, and for the first 3 years, it was opt-in for the students. So we, by no means, until 2012, had a complete collection of our ETDs. Institutionally, we relied solely on ProQuest to deliver this content, and that's not a good place to be. Our strengths. We are actively using ETD Administrator now to manage the current theses and dissertations content. I have access and can download the content that I need as I need it. I've previously developed a repository ETD collection at a former institution, so I knew a lot of the difficulties I would end up running into. I already understood the mechanics required to develop the workflow, and I think the best part is Digital Commons and ETD Administrator work cooperatively together at this point. We began with the ETDs that were in ProQuest theses and dissertations. We SFTP'd those back and developed a script to parse the metadata out of the XML files. We connected with a couple of other repository folks and used some scripts that they had written and modified it for our institution. We did some manual ingestion on the initial set to finalize the metadata that we knew we needed and to align our ingestion form with the way the document was formatted. The script development converted our XML to Excel for metadata ingestion, and I want to give a shout out to the Digital Commons folks because your batch file upload manager went live right when we needed it, and we did not have to manually attach the ETDs to the item records. So you have no clue how happy that made me. We started in small batches to ensure everything worked correctly. And by the end of last year, we had gone from 0 ETDs to 3,447. Unfortunately, 2024 started with a question from my dean about why the numbers in our repository did not match what ProQuest had. And the answer to that question was UMI copyrighted content. So we scheduled some meetings with ProQuest to see about securing the copyright on the UMI content so that we could get those items in our repository. When we met with our ProQuest rep, They actually gave us a gift and were telling us about other ETD content that they had that was not live on their site. So we secured the copyright on the UMI content, and we got more ETDs in the process. A lot of them were microfilm copies of old physical dissertations and theses from our institution that they had collected at some point. Nobody in our library had known about these microform dissertations and theses. So it really was a gift for us. We did end up with more discovery of more ETD content on some old servers that were marked for deprecation. Basically, they reached out to me and said, we found this stuff, do you want it? And I said, hell yeah. We did find a couple hundred more, mostly master's theses on a different server, and discovered those through inquiries about content that a former library employee had been hoarding. So it definitely helps to talk to people and find out what they might have. The local digital copies brought us to 3814, and when we finally got the ProQuest UMI and the microform copies, that brought us up to 6,520. At this point, we are rounding up the stragglers. We have partnered with our access services to pull any physical dissertations and theses from the circulating collection. They're having to do a manual inspection of the stacks because of the metadata problems. So it's been a lot of work for them. We're currently in process of scanning. We did contract with ProQuest to do the work. They ended up coming in cheaper than who we were going to have scan them already. So it ended up being about $5 an ETD. So it's fairly reasonable. Some of the dissertation and theses items still exist only in our archives, but we're not going to tap those until we get everything else and have as complete a collection as possible. We want to minimize the handling and make sure that we don't have other copies that we can use for that. To sustain currency of our collection, we have implemented the IR Manager export report in ETD Administrator. That's been a game changer for us. It provides us with the metadata export and the URL file locations for simple batch uploading of the new ETD content. I was connected with Allison Thompson at ProQuest, and she manages that whole program. So if you're looking to do this, she's the person to get a hold of. Final takeaways. Uploading your ETDs is a lot of work. You need to understand your institution's structure, both past and present. You need to understand the degrees your institution has offered, both past and present. You need to set up metadata fields that make sense for your local information. And utilize controlled vocabulary as much as possible. Get as much information as possible from your grad school about the degrees awarded and anyone else on your campus who might have any information about the graduate degrees. Talk to people who have been around a long time. They might give you some details that make your life a little simpler. And that's it. By the way, June is our highest download on ETDs so far, and we're just looking for more downloads. Thank you.
see if I can remember which buttons are which. All right. I know everybody's almost asleep. I'm the last person. You are almost done. I promise. Okay. So I am Brittany Sandler. I am a research support librarian from Becker Medical Library at Washington University in St. Louis. I am part of a larger research services team, but on that team, I am the repository manager, so both for the data repository now, as well as our regular institutional repository for scholarly communications. And I'm going to talk to you, as you can read, slide about sharing data, the NIH data management and sharing policy, NIH person, now that I know that you're here, and then why we chose Digital Commons data as our data repository platform, and that was intentional. There it goes. Okay, so quick background, just to give you some context. WashU School of Medicine, so the medical school, we are ranked number 2 in receiving NIH funding. And I primarily am sharing that just so you get an understanding that when it comes to us getting funding, that is an extremely, like we are heavily invested in the NIH. We have to have all of our ducks in a row. So we need to make sure that our public access compliance and everything else is there. So when the NIH data management and sharing policy went into effect last year in January, our DMS team, and there are 4 of us, myself, 2 senior support scientists, and then my boss, we wanted to figure out the best ways we could come up with to help researchers meet these requirements. The fact that they were going to be required not only to have a data management sharing plan, but then upload their data. And we wanted WashU, and specifically the medical school, to be a generalist repository, one that they could come to us and upload there. So our initial set was we created a series within our original Digital Commons at Becker, our institutional repository. And it was functional. I'm not going to say you could definitely do it. However, what we found is we were doing a lot of workaround and Band-Aids. So I know DataCite was mentioned earlier, like I was having to go to DataCite to mint to DOI, then go back to Digital Commons at Becker to get all of that information uploaded. And then when we had restricted access, which we have quite a few restricted access files because they are HIPAA and we have de-identified, human data and that in there, we had to do a lot of workarounds and zip files, et cetera. So the short version of that is it was functional, but we realized very quickly that we needed a data-focused repository. And so we went about trying to figure out what were our options. And we came up with our criteria. So the biggest one, number 1, as you probably have heard about these things, it had to have the desirable characteristics and fair data principles. And specifically with Digital Commons data, Mendeley data Digital Commons data is the institutional version of Mendeley data. And Mendeley data was already identified by the NIH as part of the GRAE, the Generalist Repository Ecosystem Initiative. So because of that, we knew and we were confident that we were going to get the expanded and unified metadata that we were going to need. It would automatically give us a DOI. The licensing information was going to be there. And that if any updates were going to be made to Mendeley data, we were confident that it was going to trickle down to us. So that box was already checked. Stuff that was going to go into our repository, we knew the NIH was going to be okay with that. We were good. Data access options. I mentioned restricted data controls. We do have quite a few of data sets that come in. We liked the idea that we could kind of sort of have a work in progress. We could give the grant funders or the journals the DOI. We could provide them with a link that they could guarantee that, yes, we were actually this was going in, but we didn't have to have a final, finished, published data set. So that work in progress ability, because most data sets actually take quite a long time to curate. So the time that you get it versus the time that it actually gets published and uploaded, there's a lag in time. But this allowed us to kind of show that, yes, it's going to happen. I promise you, you're good. The customizable workflow was another one. We, as I know it's been mentioned in some other repositories, we have a mediated workflow, so we do not allow our faculty members to upload those data sets on their own. I'm not saying that WashU faculty don't do that. They can sometimes go to Figshare, they go to Zenodo, or they go somewhere else. we at WashU wanted that if it was going to go to us and it was going to be part of our data repository, that we were going to control, kind of like they give us that stuff, we work with them to make sure that the metadata that we're uploading is accurate, it has all the information we're supposed to need in it, and we're good. And there's some additional tools that we're going to eventually be able to use. We're just not using them yet, but those are kind of like nice and they're out there. Features. One of the other things that you can see, like in your regular repository, once you zip a file, you're kind of downloading all of those files. In Digital Commons data, we have the ability, you can pick and choose. You can download all of the files from a data set, or you can just download the ones that you want. And at least the files that we get in data, at Digital Commons data, we have some data sets that have 31 file folders, and each of those file folders has 4 different files in it. And nobody wants to download that one zip file. Like, that's too much. At least this way, they can kind of pick and choose and go through and decide what they want and what they don't want. We could get version control. And we like the fact that I mentioned the expanded metadata and like everything being consistent. I will say we were also very pleased. I can see Aaron back there. He's kind of hide a little bit. He is my Digital Commons data person. Very good work with that. We added some like custom things in there. So keywords is not part of it, but we have keywords in ours. Like there is categories, which is unified across the board. We add keywords. We've got revision history. We've got some other things where as we've been uploading data sets, we've been able to kind of kick the tires, so to speak, and go, this isn't working, we would like this, and if it can happen, it was able to do so. So that's been great. This is sort of what I call my icing on the cake, so to speak. This was not a primary criteria, but I will tell you the fact that both of these, so the one on your left, sorry, that is our scholarly communications repository. The one on the right is our data repository. The two of these, for the end user, for the person who's going to, they think they're in the same platform. These are totally different systems. But we liked the fact that from a branding standpoint and everything else, you guys look like, when they come to us, they think they're in the same place, and it's great. So we have a link on our main repository that sends them to Digital Commons data and vice versa, so they all know where they think they're still living in one institutional thing. And a quick by the numbers. As I told you, like, it takes a long time to get some of these data sets up. So we launched last year. We started doing all of our migration and everything. Current published data sets are at 15. They're about somewhat split, restricted versus unrestricted. We have about, right now, actually that's from when I did this to now, we probably have about another 3 or 4, so like 14 draft data sets. Again, about evenly split. But we also know that there's a lot of data management sharing plans being written, and they are specifically, as opposed to now that our faculty know we exist, instead of choosing Figshare or Zenodo or something else, they are choosing to write Digital Commons data in as their generalist repository, which we also like, also from a brand standpoint, that you know if you're coming to WashU's repository and you're looking at our data, that it's from our scientists, and that matters. So thank you. That is it. We were fixed. All right.
Thank you, Brittany. Yeah, please come. And if all of our other lightning speakers could join us on the stage for our Q&A session.
You had something in one of your slides about strong SEO keywords, increasing the number of takedown requests. Can you expand on that?
Yeah. Hello? Yes. Yeah, one of the great features we love about Digital Commons is the strong SEO. When we had migrated these projects, we had a large increase in takedown requests from students. I think the nature of creative works is that they are commercial and that students might be releasing the music that they're producing as part of their project at a later date. And so the nature of those projects kind of lends itself to different access concerns. So we have found that since migrating, our takedown requests have increased.
So this question is for Brittany. So I'm curious, you have both Digital Commons and then you have the Digital Commons data. So you have an article in Digital Commons that was utilizing data also in your data repository. Are you cross-linking that? Are you cross-referencing from the article to the data or back from the data to the article?
I think it's working. Okay. So I would say no, we're not cross-referencing necessarily to our repository. So within Digital Commons data, you have the ability to include like associated publication link. So that's where we're putting that link right now. I will tell you that we've had faculty have reached out to us. We have several faculty that have publications in our original scholarly repository, and they do not have their data associated with it, so they are in the process of kind of working through to see if they can get all of that data added to our Digital Commons data. And when that happens, yes, I will end up linking those two just because where it originally resided.
Okay, now it's on. Okay, I have a question for Jennifer Deal. What made you think to use LibWizard in the way that you're using it? Because honestly, we have it on our campus too. The reference librarians are always going on and on about how fantastic it is, and I just like, oh, that's their thing. I'm not even thinking about it. So I was very interested to hear about that.
Sorry. So, well, we found out that because we did try the Digital Commons platform submission, but having to create an account and log in was a huge barrier for our users because it's just really hard to get them. I feel like, they hit that wall and they're just like, never mind. I wasn't even like, we've already lost them. So, and we really liked, we also tried to move to a model where we had, since we work so heavily with graduate medical education, where the coordinators from the programs, excuse me, were doing the submissions for their program, but the form was just so long that they were overwhelmed, even though it wasn't required fields or all the time. It was just very overwhelming, and because of our infrastructure, we have like 4 submission series, and then we like populate it out or collect into other areas for each program. And it was just, it was too hard to narrow that submission form down. And with LibWizard, you can really, they choose, it's an abstract, and then it just will show just those fields that they need to input. So it was really just kind of, the current option wasn't meeting our needs, and something that we could use that would.
Oh, wait, I'm gonna take one from the back. We've got 2 questions lined up.
Thank you. Amy, I love the presentation, ETD Roundup, and one thing I heard in there was that you've been working on that script to convert the ProQuest XML into Excel for easy upload into DC, and I think that's fabulous. I know folks have sort of worked on that on the past, but it's needed some updates over time. I'm getting to a question here. Would you be willing to share that script with people who might be interested in using it for their own transformations?
Hello? Okay. Yes, I would be willing to share it, but I cannot guarantee it will work entirely as expected because once I ran the script and got the metadata, I did have to do some cleanup.
We all heard those caveats, right? Okay. Thank you so much, Amy. I think it's an awesome leg up for folks who are just getting started with it and need, a place to begin. Thank you.
Okay, I have a question for Lisa Price. So I feel your pain about having to do an event, very quickly before it actually happens. And I was just very interested in, we had the challenge as well where there wasn't a registration process through that site. And I guess, could you just elaborate a little bit more on how you were using that submission form to kind of get across that? I know that's I just want to hear more about it, really.
Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, we actually added some fields. We decided what we wanted to have required and what wouldn't have to be required because we were using it for the complete registration, and so we had to offer the option of, yes, you can publish, no, you can't publish, yes, you can publish with an embargo, and the no, you can't publish would also include students who weren't submitting an electronic poster. So I had to be able to sort through those. What else did we do? Actually, I have a bunch of notes down there or on there. I can talk to you later and give you a little bit more specifics. But yeah, we had to decide what would be required, what wouldn't. We've discovered, as I said during my presentation, that we're going to have to find a way to make sure faculty are aware, because we've had a couple that had to be taken down immediately because students were working with faculty and maybe didn't know that they were working with proprietary information or information that they were wanting to commercialize at some point. Yeah.
All right. Any final questions for our amazing lightning speakers? Going once? Going twice? Okay, let's give them all a big round of applause. Thank you so much for your participation.